It is Sunday, March 8th, 2015, and a little bit breezy. I'm in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal. I'm just starting up a protest against Unitarian Universalist cover-up and denial of clergy misconduct, but specifically Unitarian Universalist misuse of Canada's blasphemy law to cover up and deny pedophilia and rape committed by Unitarian Universalist clergy. See some people coming out of the church now. So it's International Women's Day today, and I expect that there will be some protests or marches related to International Women's Day. And I'm sort of tying this in with International Women's Day. I'm even thinking of perhaps displaying these picket signs, in International Women's Day march today. But it's very unfortunate that the Unitarian Universalist Association feels that it can try to intimidate me into removing blog posts about Unitarian Universalist pedophiles and rapists by falsely accusing me of the archaic crime of blasphemous libel. On Friday, June 1st of 2012, so about 2 years and 9 months ago or so, I received a cease and desist demand letter from Stikeman Elliott, Barristers and Solicitors Litigation Lawyer, Maître Marc-André Coulombe, which, amongst a variety of other ludicrous accusations, accused me of the criminal act of blasphemous libel for allegedly making, and I do say allegedly making, this is an exact quote from the letter, unfounded and vicious allegations to the effect that ministers of the association engage in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape. I didn't even know Canada had a blasphemy law in June of 2012, so one of the first things I did was to research, what this blasphemous libel thing was all about. Maître Coulombe cited a section of the Canadian Criminal Code, so I did the appropriate online research and then very quickly discovered that Canada did in fact have a blasphemy law, but it was incredibly vaguely defined. It was not defined in the law itself. You have to go to jurisprudence to, get an idea of, what actually constitutes blasphemous libel. And in doing so, I quickly discovered, that even if I was actually doing what Maître Coulombe falsely accused me of doing, it wouldn't actually amount to the criminal act of blasphemous libel. In other words, even if I was making false and even libelous accusations against certain Unitarian Universalist ministers, that this would not actually amount to blasphemous libel. Blasphemous libel is attacking the most deeply held religious beliefs and practices and so on of a religious community. So about the only circumstance under which I could be guilty of the criminal act of blasphemous libel for criticizing Unitarian Universalist ministers for engaging in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape would be if such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape were somehow held to be sacred by Unitarian Universalists. And the last time I checked, that wasn't the case, at least not yet. One never knows, just how far Unitarian Universalists want to go on the, sexual freedom front, as it were. So, anyhow, getting back to what happened, because the few blog posts that I had actually published about Unitarian Universalist pedophiles and or rapists were very well founded in fact, and based on newspaper reports about Unitarian Universalists who'd actually been convicted of rape and or pedophilia, I wrote back to Maitre Coulombe and said, well, I'm having considerable difficulty finding blog posts that match your description of unfounded and vicious allegations to the effect that ministers of the association engage in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape. Could you please provide titles of the blog posts in question? Could you provide the URLs, that is the internet address of the blog post you're talking about? Can you give me a date or something? Can you give me something to help me find these blog posts that you allege to contain unfounded and vicious allegations? Because he had not actually done so in the initial cease and desist demand. That he just made that broad accusation without presenting any evidence supporting it. So Maitre Coulombe wrote back to me and pretended that my claims not to be able to find blog posts that matched his description were not credible, to use his words, and essentially told me to go find them myself. I should know where they are. It wasn't necessary for him to identify them. That I ought to know which blog posts contained unfounded and vicious allegations, yada yada yada. So I had to write back to Maitre Coulombe and explain to him, well, no, I know where I've written blog posts about Unitarian Universalist pedophiles and rapists. I just don't know where the unfounded ones are. The blog posts I wrote were about people who are actually convicted of such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape, and therefore they are not unfounded as you claim. So unless you can identify some blog posts that are actually unfounded and vicious, well, as far as I'm concerned, they don't exist. So I never heard from Maitre Coulombe after that. He never got back to me, never identified any blog posts that actually contained unfounded and vicious allegations, never even identified any blog posts that he alleged to contain unfounded and vicious allegations. So I guess that means he was full of shit when he made that false accusation. So more than 2 years later, we're still waiting for Unitarian Universalists to provide evidence supporting their bullshit legal accusations against me. We got people coming out of the Unitarian Church in Montreal, and I got here a little on the late side. I am normally here before the service, about an hour before the service, usually at least half an hour before the service starts, and stick around for another half hour because there's always some stragglers. But this morning various things got in the way. So instead of protesting in front of the church, I decided I would do an impromptu protest in front of Stikeman Elliott barristers and solicitors. So I did a brief little photo op kind of protest in front of Stikeman Elliott. And then since the Gazette editorial offices weren't so far away, I walked up to St. Catherine Street and did another impromptu protest in front of the Gazette editorial offices, because the Gazette's justice reporter, or perhaps I should say the Gazette's former justice reporter, because it seems that Sue Montgomery is no longer working for the Gazette, she has repeatedly refused to responsibly report on the justice issues that I have brought to her and the Gazette's attention. And we'll let this guy pass.
Forgot to put your crop forward?
What?
You forgot to put your crop forward?
No, I got distracted by other stuff, and I did a little protest in front of Stikeman Elliott Barristers and Solicitors, and also the Gazette. So figured I'd just come and catch people coming out. So this fellow suspected that I might have forgotten to put my clock forward for spring, and that is actually not the case. I was up at 6 this morning, and no, I was just busy, you know, with other things, and doing a few things on the internet, which can always be a little distracting you from the time. So I had a nice coffee and internet session, which went a little bit longer than expected, and so I decided that I wouldn't bother protesting before the service, because basically wouldn't have got there until about 15 minutes or so before it started. So I said, well, I'll skip that. I will go and do a little protest in front of Stikeman Elliott Barristers and Solicitors, and mainly just for photo op. I mean, nobody was there on the weekend. On Sundays, you know, not likely that any Stikeman Elliott lawyers are going to be there, and there's not a whole lot of public either. Then after that, I thought, well, you know, since the Gazette's just up the street, I might as well do a little International Women's Day thing for Sue Montgomery. Somebody doesn't want to see the signs. This guy walks by doing his very, very best to avoid eye contact with the picket signs. I should add that the previous fellow did too. They just don't want to know, you know. They do not want to know, you know, the seamy underside of the Unitarian Universalist religious community. They don't want to acknowledge, you know, that Unitarian Universalists have their own clergy sexual misconduct problems, and not only do they have their own clergy sexual misconducts, but they're actually just as prone